And we are live, folks. This is a new episode of Justin and Donald Save America. We just got some new poll results in. We work with Rasmussen to put out polls every couple of months. We did one talking about the things that we're going to talk about now is the Supreme Court, SCOTUS, and we have a few questions that revolve around it. And folks, buckle in because the results are way worse than we were expecting them to be. Way worse. So we're going to talk about that on this episode of Justin and Donald Save America. Before we do, I do have to put out that call to everyone to help out our show. You could do this very easily just by clicking a few buttons, hitting that like button, sharing this content, hitting subscribe if you haven't already, leaving a comment, all of these things that cost you absolutely nothing but help our show break through those big tech algorithms that prevents content like this from being presented in front of more eyeballs. Justin Haskins, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Gearing up for the big move across the country, 3,000 miles. So that's exciting.
He's doing it in an electric car
dog.
too.
I'm not driving in an electric car. It is a hybrid though. It's not my hybrid. It's someone else's hybrid. But yeah, I'll be driving 3,000 miles. So, and then we're getting close. We're a week and a half away roughly before I'm making the big move. So
fun stuff.
Yeah. So you may never see me again. This may be
That's
it.
Right.
Maybe this is when I just disappear. I don't know. So
yeah, you get somewhere into like Wyoming and just we lose contact with you.
That's it. Yeah.
So just a little behind the scenes when it comes to these Rasmussen polls that we commission every couple of months, 3-4 months, something like that.
Yeah, there's no schedule really, but yeah, it's every few months.
We've noticed kind of like a trend where, you know, regardless of how crazy of a question that we put in there, we still get a sizable chunk of some demographic one way or another that supports that crazy thing. So the most recent poll that we did towards the beginning, well, I don't know, like 3-4 months ago, was about COVID. And we were just trying to question, like, how authoritarian are people going to be over COVID and not getting vaccinated? So when we were coming up with questions, we just kept trying to push the envelope. And the craziest question that we can come up with, you know, we talked about, like, you know, giving people fines or restricting their, like, travel access. But, like, the craziest thing that we could think of was, should people's kids be taken away from them if they don't get vaccinated? And do you remember what it was? Like 25% of Democrats said yes to that. Like, so even like a ridiculous question, we still have like 25% of Democrats saying yes to this. So this time around, we asked a series of questions about various topics, some having to do with just America, some having to do with the Constitution, some having to do with the Supreme Court. And we're going to be releasing those as the week progresses here. So the first batch of questions has to do with the Supreme Court. And the first couple of questions were very basic. You know, what do you think about it? What are your general thoughts about the Supreme Court? Are you generally in favor of it? You generally against it? You know, what do you think? And then we just try to keep pushing the envelope into like crazier and crazier questions. And we even said when we were coming up with some of these, I think you said, like, what if we get the results back and it's like 1% of people say yes to this? And I was like, well, then we would have found our limit. And we got the results back, and let's just say we haven't found the limit yet. So
the funny thing is, throughout this, when we were writing these questions for the poll, I was very skeptical that Rasmussen would even agree to run some of them. because I truly thought this. So just to give people like sort of our goal with these polls is normally to try to get down to what people actually think about a topic. But it's usually either a topic that no one ever polls anybody about, like the Great Reset, right?
Sure.
Or it's topics people get polled about, but we want to get down to the heart of it. I don't want some stupid generic polling question that's like, you know, what's the just pure favorability, right? Or whatever the most basic do you think Donald Trump or Joe Biden is, you know, doing a good job with the economy? Like, fine. Like, I'm not saying that's useless, but we do polls. If you go back and look at our track record, and we've now probably done, I don't know how many published polls we've done, like probably 15 or 20 or something. But our polls are not normal polls. They ask questions other people don't ask. And I thought this time, though, maybe we had gone too far. And Rasmussen was finally going to be like, you know what, guys? We like you, but this is too much. And they didn't at all. They let us go with it. And it totally bore itself out because it was not like, oh, like you said, 1% of people had this crazy opinion. Nope. There's actually quite a few people who had some very crazy opinions. So this poll was mostly focused on the Supreme Court, the one we're going to talk about today. There were 3 polls that were part of this set of polls. This one, all about the Supreme Court, what people think of it, what they think we should do with it going forward, things like that. So that's all we're trying to do is find out what people actually think about the Supreme Court. That's it.
Just side note, make a note of this. Just jot it down, Justin. We should do a video of just like our 5 most ridiculous poll findings in our entire career of doing these.
We probably should. We've had an amazing polling career. We've had an amazing polling career. We've got our polls have been featured by everybody in the universe, and this is why we ask the questions other people don't ask, and that's right. Why. So so the first question here you're going to go over. This is not one of the crazy questions.
No.
We're starting off nice and easy.
Baseline.
We work into the crazy stuff. That's how it works.
We start off with some baseline questions, and then we get crazier and crazier from there. So as you can see from the top of this national survey of 1,025 U.S. likely voters, it's important to note that likely voters, this isn't just general population. These are people that said that they are likely to vote come the next election. This was conducted at the beginning of July through the 6th and 7th, 2022 by Rasmussen reports. 1,025, that's considered to be like a statistically significant poll sample size.
It's a pretty good sample size for a poll. Yep.
So anyways, question 1. Do you have a very favorable, somewhat unfavorable, very unfavorable opinion of the U.S. Supreme Court? So just off the top, we've got our likely voters saying 52% either very or somewhat favorable opinion of the Supreme Court, compared to 42% that have a somewhat unfavorable or very unfavorable. So, I mean, some of these, it's kind of what you would expect, I guess, especially, we decided that we were going to release this batch of questions first just because the Supreme Court is so in the news lately. Right. So this is a little bit kind of split down the middle, a little bit more favorable in terms of just your likely voter sampling, 52% to 42%. It doesn't get real interesting until you start looking at breaking it down by demographics. So you see here that it's got men and women. It's got different age groups, 19 to 39, 40 to 64, 65 and older. It's got it broken down by race and political party. So we're probably going to look at the political party ones mostly, unless there's something, some specific takeaway that Justin has jotted down. But when it comes to a political affiliation, let's see here. 63% of Democrats have a somewhat or very unfavorable view of the Supreme Court. Probably is not busting anyone's minds now. Do you have any comments on this first question there, Justin?
I just think that people need to keep in mind when they see this, just keep in mind how this does not seem that crazy. This seems sort of what you would expect.
Yes.
I think, given everything that's going on. But this does not align with the other questions we ask later on about like what they want, what people want to do with the Supreme Court and stuff like that. So we're going to get to that soon, but just keep that in mind. It's strange that this question was kind of what we expected. Yeah. And then the other questions, the responses were nuts. That's, I guess, right. It's kind of surprising to me. I don't know.
Question 2. Do you strongly agree, somewhat disagree, or strongly disagree with the following statement? The U.S. Supreme Court is a fundamentally racist institution. So out of likely voters, about a third either strongly agree or somewhat agree with that, compared to almost 2/3 saying that they strongly disagree or somewhat to disagree with that. Again, that's not shocking to me. That seems like a pretty expected outcome for that. Out of Democrats, we have 56, so over half of Democrats saying that they support that statement that the U.S. Supreme Court is a systematically, fundamentally racist institution. Justin, again, it's not blowing my mind or anything with these results.
Yeah, well, I mean, I will say half of Democrat voters thinking that it's a fundamentally racist institution is not good.
No,
that's not good.
Right.
Because what that means is when that party is in power, you know, their idea is this institution is just rotten to its core.
Yeah.
So it's definitely bad, but given everything that happened with Black Lives Matters and all that other stuff, I suppose it's not that shocking. Just in case you were curious, African Americans, 54% of them said it's fundamentally racist, and 50% of Hispanics said it was fundamentally racist, compared to 27% of white people. So if you're a minority, you are substantially more likely to believe it's fundamentally racist, which is interesting because there really hasn't been any major Supreme Court decision anytime recently having anything to do with race at all.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting that there's so many minorities who feel as though this is a racist institution when it's not like something has happened, you know, that was big in the news and they're like, well, this is proof they're racist. It's nothing has happened, really. When was the last time we had a landmark case related to race? Like 70 years ago? Like, it doesn't happen very often. So it's strange that so many people feel that way. But I think what it shows is that on the left, this talking point of everything in America is racist has kind of worked.
Sure.
And it's worked even for institutions that are not really talking about race all that much, like the Supreme Court.
Yeah, one of the demographic breakdowns that I see routinely throughout all of these questions that we're going to talk about that has the highest number of poor judgment is the 19 to 39-year-old group. So that on this
they
question,
weren't the worst on this one though.
No,
they were bad. But they weren't the worst.
49%, not great. So just
half
about
of young people. So, but that's important, right? Half of young people believe that the Supreme Court, which is in charge of interpreting the Constitution, it's the most powerful, in some ways, the most powerful institution in America, the most powerful country in the world, at least when it comes to civil liberties, it's the most powerful institution. And half of young people think it's racist.
Right.
So that's not good.
Yeah.
That's again, not good.
That's just, it's delegitimized in their mind. How could something be legitimate if it's fundamentally racist, right?
Right. And the next question gets into that even worse. It's getting worse now for us here.
So do you strongly agree, somewhat disagree, or strongly disagree with the following statement? The U.S. Supreme Court is a fundamentally sexist institution that favors men over women. Well, considering the Supreme Court ruling, the decision that came out not too long ago about Roe versus Wade and all of that, this one you would almost expect the results to be a little bit worse than the previous one. So just baseline likely voters, we've got 41% agreeing with that statement that the U.S. Supreme Court is fundamentally sexist institution. 54% disagreeing with that. Again, if you go to that age group, the younger age group, 19 to 39, we've got 54%, so over half of that age group saying yes, the Supreme Court is sexist, favors men over women. And when it comes to Democrats, we have a strong majority, 67%. That is saying that yes, it is
that's
fundamentally sexist. Fundamentally sexist.
Two-thirds Democrats think it's fundamentally sexist institution.
And again, if you believe that means it's delegitimized in your mind. How can you take anything that seriously from a thing that you believe wholeheartedly is sexist foundationally?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I don't know how you can. I know. And that's the scary thing, right? So if you add these two things together, the racist and the sexism question, the racism and sexism question, what you end up with is more than half, clearly, more than half of Democrat voters. Again, not just anyone who calls themselves a Democrat, not just any person walking down the street, but Democrat voters. More than half of them believe the Supreme Court is both essentially racist and sexist. So if you believe that, if about half of Democrats believe the Supreme Court is both racist and sexist, or I suppose racist and or sexist, then why do you care what they have to say? Why should we listen to them?
Yeah.
If it's a fundamentally racist and sexist institution, it's not a good institution, right? So why should we listen to them? Why should we trust their judgment? Why should we care what they have to say? That's a serious problem. Again, these are the people in charge of essentially defending the last line of defense for your liberty. And you have half of voters in the Democrat Party saying, which is still in power right now, by the way. I know it's hard to believe that, but they're in power right now.
Right.
Half of the voters in that party that's in power believe they are racist and sexist. Really, really bad. Really bad.
Oh God. Yeah. All right. So now
We're getting worse.
We got so many worse questions here. All right. There are 9 justices on the Supreme Court. Some congressional Democrats have proposed expanding that number to 13. This is called court packing. This is when you ever see court packing in the news, this is what they're talking about, expanding the number of justices. Would you strongly favor, somewhat oppose, or strongly oppose legislation to increase the size of the Supreme Court to 13 seats? So this is something that if you look up any articles about this, it seems like it's very politically unlikely, and that you're not going to get like a whole lot of, even if Democrats have a majority in the Senate and Congress in general, like the appetite to actually expand the Supreme Court is just not there. That's what these articles will try to tell you if you find anything that's talking about this. So our poll numbers with that in mind were a little alarming to me. So again, just likely voters to start off with, we've got 40% that are saying that they either strongly favor or somewhat favor this plan of putting an additional 4 justices onto the Supreme Court. That number jumps up to 55% for that 19 to 39 demographic. So over half of that age group wants an increase of the Supreme Court by 4 justices. And when it comes to Democrats, 64%. So almost 2/3 of Democrats saying, yeah, I could support that. Let's put 4 more justices in there. Justin, do you think that this is going to be a political movement for them? I mean, I know that they rally against this. They rail for this every time something happens with the Supreme Court that they don't like. But then, it kind of quickly fades away as something else kind of jumps into the news cycle.
I don't know.
Do you think that this is going to become like kind of a mainstay position for the Democrats?
It's hard. So the problem with there's 2 sort of ideas here, competing ideas. One is the far left-wing part of the party, which in many ways is the driving force behind a lot of things that happen in the Democrat Party these days, absolutely wants this. Like they wouldn't hesitate at all to do this. Okay. If they could increase it to 25 Supreme Court justices tomorrow, they would. Okay. Sure. And they'd pick them all, and Republicans would never control the Supreme Court ever again. In fact, they would pass a constitutional amendment that says, let's make it 51 Supreme Court justices, and let's never have more than 51 Supreme Court justices. And Joe Biden gets to pick them all. They would be totally fine with that. The thing is, though, I think the rest of the Democrat Party, so the other half or so of the Democrat Party, and all the moderates in both parties understand that might be the end of America. Just 4 Supreme Court justices. I'm not talking about the 50, but if you add just 4 more Supreme Court justices, that might be literally the end of America. I don't know that America could withstand that. You mean to tell me everyone's been playing by the same rules for all these years, and now your side, which has had all kinds of the left-wing courts, have been dominating things for a long, long time, putting in all kinds of crazy decisions that people who believe in an originalist understanding of the Constitution think was absolutely, basically illegal in many cases. Crazy Supreme Court cases. Many of them have been overturned in the last 20 years by other Supreme Courts. And we all lived with it because that's the way that things are set up. Those are the rules. Now you're telling us that you don't get a case you don't like. It's an important one for you. So now we're going to change the rules and we're going to put our own people in charge. I don't know that America will survive. That literally might be the end of America. So are you willing to risk ending the country? The far left says, absolutely, we're willing to risk that. They don't care. But the rest of the party, like the moderate wing and the establishment wing, who might not even be moderate, but just don't want America to disappear, or be broken in half, they probably wouldn't go along with. So I don't know if they will ever have the votes to actually pull this off. They would need a lot of far left people in the Senate to do it. It's possible, but it's not going to happen this year. And it's not going to happen next year because they're going to lose Congress. And so I don't know if it's going to happen for them anytime soon. But could you see this being a platform for them like 4 years into the future? Yeah, I could, because I think the far left wing of that party might demand it and just take it over. And who the heck knows at that point? So that's what scares me the most about that question. It's not that they want it. It's that the implication, or even that they would do it. It's that the implication of that is America ends. That's very possible. It's very possible America ends at that point in time.
I just wonder, like, when I saw those poll results, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, are we like telling the left, like, hey, like, your side is okay with this? Like 65% want this. Like, like, has it become, because of our poll results, more politically feasible? It's a little concerning.
If so, the next two are even worse, though. So,
okay, second to last question here. Would you strongly favor, somewhat oppose, or strongly oppose legislation that would abolish the current Supreme Court and establish a new democratically elected Supreme Court with justices chosen by the American people directly?
This was one that I basically just threw in there at the last minute and was like, you know what? Let's throw some more crazy ones in there. Because at first I was like, I don't know, Donnie. I don't know if we should put this one crazy question that you wanted in. And then at the last minute, I'm like, you know what? Maybe he's right. Let's throw in a few more crazy questions. And this was one of the last minute additions.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that I put it in there. This is remarkable. Truly.
Out of likely voters, we got 37%. So about a third of likely voters are in favor of just blowing up one third of like, like the main branches of the government here.
Yep, blow it up.
The age group 19 to 39-year-olds, we've got 54%. Over half of that youngest demographic saying, yeah, let's blow up the Supreme Court and replace it with something else that wouldn't resemble what we have now at all.
And can you imagine if Supreme Court justices were democratically elected? Can you imagine what that would be like? Those elections? Can you imagine?
And 53% of Democrats, so over half of likely voter Democrats, are in favor of this, the abolishing the current Supreme Court and how it's composed, how it's created, and instead replace it with democratically elected justices. Because if you thought the Supreme Court was political now,
wait till they have to campaign to be on it. Then it'll be really impartial at that point in time, right?
It's unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
These results are unbelievable, Justin.
Unbelievable. 53%. Can you scroll right there and see if we can get the liberal demographic?
I think the liberal demographic on all of these are even worse.
I think so. So it's 54. So it's about where the other one is. But 55. No, look at the 55. Okay. So I mean, it's right in line with, I guess, the Democrat Party in general. But I mean, you can see that moderates, if you look at the more conservative you get, the less likely you are to want to destroy the Supreme Court. Moderates, though, even them, that's pretty high for a
41%.
41%, that's high. So 41% of moderates and 53 or 54% or so of liberals, depending on how you round. That's crazy. That is truly crazy. Again, I said the other one's the end of the Supreme Court. I mean, the end of America. This is the end of America for sure. Like, it's not even a question. Like, if they actually pass a law that says, you know what, we're going to blow up the Supreme Court and we're just going to have elections, like, literally, you're going to have secession.
Yeah.
For like more than half the states are out that's the end of America.
Yeah,
So
and before people start criticizing my math skills, when these numbers are put into the spreadsheet, it'll be 33.412 repeating and all of that. So when I highlight both of them, it auto-generates a sum down here. So that's what I'm reading off. So yes, I know 33 plus 21 is 54, even though I just said that it comes out to 55.
They don't line up exactly.
All right, just before I get some mean comments.
That's fair. Because you will.
No,
only 52% want to blow up the Supreme Court, not 53. It's like
fake news.
Yeah, fake news.
All right.
Yeah, so the last one. So where do we? So you might ask, where do we go from here? Right?
Yeah, how do we get crazy?
We've now eliminated the Supreme Court. We've gone from, do you like the Supreme Court? Do you think it's racist? Do you think it's sexist? Should we add more Supreme Court justices? Should we just blow it up and start all over? So where do we go? Where do we go from there? What's worse than blowing it up? What's worse than blowing up the Supreme Court is putting the United Nations in charge of it. That's what's worse. Yeah. So now we don't even have a Supreme Court, essentially. The United Nations.
We don't have national sovereignty anymore. This question is basically like, should we get rid of national sovereignty?
Basically.
So the way that's worded is, would you strongly favor, somewhat oppose, or strongly oppose a constitutional amendment that would give the United Nations the authority to reverse U.S. Supreme Court decisions that UN members believe violate human rights?
This was one that I did not think Rasmussen would let us.
Yeah,
because I thought they would say to us, "This just sounds too crazy. No one's going to say yes to this. You guys are wasting a question here."
We thought maybe it would get 5-10% of people saying yes to this, and then that would be our line. Like, okay, now we know where to go up to that line when we're asking future questions and future polls. And the results of this show that we have not gotten to that line yet.
Nope.
Because it wasn't 5 to 10%. Out of likely voters alone, it was 29%. Nearly a third, over a quarter of likely voters said, yeah, you know what? The United Nations should have supreme authority over the Supreme Court of the United States. What?
Yeah, well, and in this is one of those rare ones too, where the not sure is actually important. Because it's like, what do you mean you're not sure? You're not sure? Like, what does that even mean? Like, could go either way. Maybe the United Nations should be in charge of America. I don't know. It's like,
I'm not sure. The jury's still out on that one.
Like, what does that even mean? I want to talk to those people.
Out of the 19 to 39-year-old demographic, we have 48%, so nearly half of our youngest demographic there.
That is so terrifying.
Out of Democrats, we have 40%, 4 out of every 10.
So young people were more likely than just Democrats.
Yeah. And then for the liberals, we have an even higher number, 42%.
So young people. So that means young people were more likely than even liberals.
Yeah. It was 48%. I mean,
that's we are in trouble, people. We are in deep trouble.
Yeah.
Deep trouble. America is not in a good place right now.
Yeah, when we first talked about this, we both got the poll results. We started looking through them. And the first thing that I think you said to me when we talked over the phone about the results was like, on one hand, it's like these results are great. They're going to make for like some juicy stories and headlines and stuff. We're probably going to get some media attention. But on the other hand, like, do we just pack it up? Like, have we lost? Is the country over? Like, this is
literally
terrible.
This is what I wrote to you. I got it was a text message. This is what I wrote. I said to you, these poll results are amazing. Better than I could have ever expected. I'm talking about from a getting media perspective.
Yeah.
And you wrote, wow. I just read through the answers with Chris, and I said, I know. I don't know if I should be really happy that the poll is great or quit my job because America is doomed anyway.
Exactly.
And that is exactly how I feel. Every time I look at them, I say, if half of America, young people, not young Democrats, half of young voters, and remember, it's young voters. So there could be other young people that become voters that also hold this opinion that are not included in this. If half of likely young voters say, because it's even likely voters say, hey, we think the United Nations should actually be in charge of the Supreme Court. And they should just make our decisions for us if they don't like, well, only if they don't like the decisions we make. If they do, then, they can stay out of it. But if they don't, then they can make decisions for us. It's like, basically, you don't want America. Like, you basically just want us to be like part of the United Nations, like you don't really care about what does it mean to have a country if your rights and laws are ultimately determined by some international institution that you have no body over. It's almost like these people are suggesting that because why do we have America in the first place, right? Like, what's the point of America? Why do we separate ourselves from from England, from the king, right? And all of this stuff, because of this idea that the people here, our own American people, this nation that was developing from a colony, it was a colony, but we were 1,000 miles away from England, and we had our own customs and our own way of doing things, and we didn't have full political power. We should make our own decisions here and decide for ourselves what life is like. And now we're saying, you know what? Let's go back into the arms of Europe, except this time let's add in China and let's add in Russia and all these other clowns that are in the United Nations too, because what we've seen from the United Nations over the last 100 years has been so great. We want them in charge of us. It's like, do you understand what you're saying? Like, this is one of the most ineffective, crazy, the most terrible institutions in the world at protecting human rights, and you want them to decide what our human rights should be? Madness.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest problem here is that these people that gave their answers for this poll and picked the wrong choice, they don't understand the implications of what this means. Like, you could have a conversation with just a random person on the street and talking about disinformation that's on the internet and whether or not it should be allowed. And it's like, of course, people don't want disinformation on the internet. They only want to be able to be exposed to real information. And so they say, no, it shouldn't be allowed. Their disinformation should be not included. Lies and stuff should not be included on the internet. But then that begs the question, well, then who decides what's a lie? Who decides what's misinformation? And you realize pretty quickly that these things are subject to biases, agenda seeking, all of this different, gatekeeping type things, where some people's interpretation of what's reality and what's not isn't black and white. So it's like, you have to realize what the implications of the thing that you're talking about here is. And in this case, it's like, okay, you know what? If the Supreme Court decides something that's a violation of human rights, it should be, there should be something else that's able to stop that and reverse it or whatever. When in reality, the implications of this is that you are ceding sovereignty of your country to a supranational government. And historically, if you look back on that, it doesn't have any good outcomes. So we have to educate people on what the implications of some of these things are.
Right. And it's not that and this is important. It's not that the United Nations, like the idea of having an international body where different countries can come together and try to work out their differences and coordinate on, like, in principle, that's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But the whole fear that people have about the United Nations, the ones that have it, is that it will eventually just become the sole, government in effect, either, how that works itself out, you don't exactly know, but does at some point that become the government of all governments? And then everybody is just beholden to whatever the United Nations decides. And that is exactly what they're suggesting here, in effect, because it doesn't really matter what, we still get to set our tax policy here. And it's like, well, if we live in a universe where the United Nations actually decides what it means, what free speech is, and what right to bear arms means, and all those kinds of things, then do you really think that they're going to let you decide anything at all? Those are the most fundamental rights anyway. Those are the ones that matter the most anyhow. So it really is incredibly shocking that there are that many young people that think that that's a good idea. And I think, and we didn't get into this because it's in another part of the poll that we're not going to talk about. It's a separate poll, but all the same people are polled. So we had 3 polls with Rasmussen, but it's really was one poll with one group of people, and we're just publishing them as 3 polls. that poll asked a question about something about, it was more about America in general and what people think of America, and whether America is just a fundamentally racist place and sexist place and whatever. And kind of similar to what we saw here, it was a lot of people, a huge chunk of especially Democrats, believe America is just a bad place, basically. And so if you believe America is just a bad place, and you believe the institutions are racist and sexist, and you believe the Supreme Court's racist and sexist and all of this, then it's not hard to imagine why you would say, you know what, let's just give power to somebody else, because we're terrible anyway. We're just awful people.
Right.
And that idea, which has gotten into the bloodstream of the left from the education system and elsewhere, is fundamentally eroding and destroying the country in a very real way. And this, I think, is ironclad proof of it. It's ironclad proof. We are reaching a point in time in our history where half of young people who are going to be, the main demographic in 10, 15 years, half of those people believe the Supreme Court is racist and sexist, that the United Nations should be in charge of human rights. And when we get into the other questions, you'll see they basically, just sort of to summarize, they hate the Constitution. They think America is a fundamentally terrible place, racist and sexist in many ways. And so if that's half the country believes that, half the voters, you're on track for this whole thing to come tumbling down within the next, say, 10 to 20 years. That's the timeline we're on right now.
Right. Yeah. Everyone, by the time that this video is out, we should have this first part of the survey published. We'll probably have the link in the show notes underneath this video in the video description here. Or if you're just listening to the audio, if this is put out as a podcast, you can go to heartland.org. It'll be a featured spot on the top of the webpage. You'll be able to click in there, find the press release of this specific part of the poll, and then in that, there will be a link where you can see all the crosstabs, this little Excel sheet that I've been scrolling throughout this entire video. And you can go in and look and see other stats that we didn't highlight, and other demographics, and what people that made over $200,000 said, or anything like that. You can go through and scroll and find those things. And if you find anything that's a particularly interesting find that we didn't go over, put it in the show comments. Write a comment about it and let us know which results you thought were most interesting, and maybe even what questions you think we should ask in the future. Because like I said, we do this every 3 or 4 months. We're always looking for a different topic, something interesting, something juicy to talk about. So if you have any other ideas when it comes to that, leave that as a comment as well. Justin, do you have any other comments on this part of the poll, or should we wrap it up?
Let's wrap it up before people start throwing themselves off of bridges or something.
That's right.
We gotta wrap it up. It's gonna get more depressing if we keep talking about it.
That is true. All right, cool. Well, this was part 1 of the poll. Keep an eye out. We might do videos on the later parts of the poll. I know that we're going to talk about this on the In the Tank podcast on the Heartland Institute YouTube channel this week on Thursday at noon. So if you want to see more of the results, check into that. But in the meantime, like I said, do all those things that could help us, our channel grow. It really does help break through that algorithm just by hitting that like button, sharing this content, leaving a comment, subscribing if you haven't already. All of those things will help show these videos to on more people's recommended feeds and all of that. Justin, where can people go to stay up to date on stuff that you're up to?
Well, they can follow me on social media at Justin T. Haskins, Facebook, Twitter, Parler, Getter, and all the rest. And then, of course, they could check out our YouTube channel at Stopping Socialism TV for the more great videos like this, and heartland.org for everything going on at the Heartland Institute, all the stuff that you and I have been working on forever, stoppingsocialism.com, another great website to go to. Plenty of places to find us if you feel inclined to do so.
That is right. All right. Thank you all for tuning in. We will talk to you next time.